Hey, it's Mickey here. As you'll probably know, I've done a lot of videos on this channel in which I look at a lot of old MS-DOS big box PC games, and I thought it might be fun to do a video in which I look at the computer I use to run a lot of these games. So that's this computer. So let's take a look. So this is the computer I use. It's an IBM PC 330 series from about, I think, 1996 or 1997, which I have lovingly nicknamed Captain Falcon, because everyone has to name their computers. I've got an old monitor which I had from about 10 years ago, back when you could still get roughly 4x3 flat screens, although annoyingly this is one of those 1920x1200 5x4 flat screens that doesn't quite do things great, and I honestly would probably consider replacing it, particularly if I could find a good CRT. But it works, it's got a VGA input, and it's what I've got. So the keyboard I'm using is a IBM Model M. It's a classic clicky keyboard where if you type on it, it makes all sorts of clicky sounds because of the buckling spring mechanism. And these are considered quite desirable keyboards by a lot of people, so I was quite lucky to be able to find one on eBay that was pretty much brand new. I think it was still sealed in a plastic wrapper and everything, so that was quite cool. The mouse, I'm using an appropriate, roughly the right sort of time IBM mouse. It's not really anything special, but it looks right with the rest of the machine, so that's good. The joystick I'm using connected to this computer is a Microsoft Sidewinder 3D Pro, and this was the joystick that I had as a kid, so I just really like it a lot, and it's super good to use, and it's awesome. One last thing I'd like to mention before we turn the computer on is that it, of course, has a 3.5-inch floppy drive and a quad-speed Creative Labs CD-ROM drive. Annoyingly, the CD drive's actually given me a few problems, like it'll make strange clunky noises and take a long time to read discs, so I'm hoping I can maybe source a era-appropriate replacement for it, but for the meantime, a lot of stuff I've been playing on this doesn't really heavily use it or doesn't cause any problems, so for now it's fine. Now I think we've all had quite enough of just looking at this thing, so let's turn on Captain Falcon. That's a phrase you'd maybe hear in some really bad fanfic, but oh well. So, as we boot up, you'll see that it's taking rather a long time to do the memory check, and that's because this has 64 MB of RAM, which is actually quite a lot for a DOS machine, so that's good. I haven't had any trouble with games running out of memory or anything like that, as long as I'm managing all my AutoExec.bat and EMS and all that nonsense. So I've installed MS-DOS 6.22 on here, which was really the final version of MS-DOS before Windows fully took over with Windows 95. So I haven't put Windows on this yet. I'm thinking I might at some point put on Windows 3.1, because there's a few Windows 3.1 games which are actually some of the hardest things to emulate these days, and it'd be cool to try them out, but for now I just haven't been bothered to put it on. So now that we've got this booted up, let's try running something, and by something I mean The Secret of Monkey Island. But of course The Secret of Monkey Island on the original floppy disk DOS version has copy protection, so first I guess we'll have to go through that with the code wheel and typing in the numbers and all that fun stuff. But now that's done, we can now listen to a bit of the glorious FM synth soundtrack for Monkey Island. So I think now is a good time to take a look at the insides of Captain Falcon. That's another line you'd hear in a bad fanfic. Hurrah. Anyway, so the case just slides off from the front, and inside you get a bit of a mess of cables and stuff because it's a fairly packed case, and it's got a lot of bad 90s cable management and bad modifications I've made to it cable management because I'm just bad at that. So I think hiding away in this corner is where the CPU is. I may be wrong. And in front of the CPU we've got that 64 MB of RAM. Other things we've got here is the sound card, which isn't the sound card it came with. And we have another addition I've made, which is a compact flash reader, which is very useful for getting files on and off this. So one thing I will point out with the sound card, it's kind of just one of these generic OEM cards that use this Yamaha chip, which I got specifically because I wanted to have proper OPL3 support and like reasonable compatibility and like support for the Dream Blaster daughter board that I've added to it so I can get wavetable sound as well. So originally the card it came with was this Sound Blaster 16 plug and play model, which is fine but has two major flaws for me. One is that it doesn't use a genuine Yamaha OPL3 core, it's using Creative's clone, which doesn't sound quite as good. Another issue is it's one of the Sound Blaster 16s with the infamous hang MIDI note bug on the MIDI out, so my Dream Blaster doesn't quite work the way it should. So that's why I'm now using this weird OEM Yamaha card instead. So that's been a very brief look at the computer I use to run my old games. I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching.